Today I fucked up by thinking I was smarter than a common ground squirrel. I have always thought of myself as rather intelligent. My wife says I am on par with an average chimp or octopus, and I'm proud of that fact. I recently had the opportunity to engage in a battle of wits with a squirrel, which I thought would have been an occasion I'd be able to rise to, given my recent triumph over the dog whom I tricked into thinking the ball had disappeared. Alas. We have a backyard with a nice garden that my wife designed and built. She's really proud of it and finds a lot of relaxation working in it. I work from home, and recently, I noticed that we've got a daily visitor. A squirrel who likes to poke around and look for food. I usually see him while making breakfast, so I usually stand by the window and watch him forage. Well, about a week ago, I saw him bury an acorn, or some kind of nut, in the fresh soil my wife had just put down. I had this bright idea that I'd go out there and put a handful of mixed nuts in there with the one he buried. I thought this was genius-level trolling. I was so amused at my idea that the next day I even stood by the window, watching him look for the spot where he had buried the nut, and I was mumbling shit to myself like, "Foolish squirrel," and, "You know nothing." Well, anyways, the squirrel unburied his nut and he found it had apparently manifested a ton of other nuts, and the look on his face was hilarious. I mean, he was visibly shocked, and quickly buried the whole stash again, then ran up a tree and sat there watching, guarding it from other squirrels. At this point I was so pleased with myself. I spent the whole day cracking up at the thought of this squirrel, and then at like 2 a.m. I was struck with an even more genius idea. I went outside and buried even more nuts in his stash, like 3 times more than I had put there originally. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night because I was too excited about this squirrel checking in on his stash again. I probably should have realized that work from home has truly loosened my grip on reality after 2 years, because at this point I found myself sitting at the window at 5 a.m. waiting for this damn squirrel to show up, and just giggling and talking to myself like, oh yeah, he's gonna trip out. The squirrel finally showed up and he checked in on his hoard, and the look on his face was indescribable. He was so flabbergasted by what he found that he actually looked over both shoulders and all around the yard, as if to say, are you shitting me? Is anybody else fucking seeing this? He just sat there inspecting the hoard for like 10 or 15 minutes, frantically trying to figure out how to manage his newfound wealth, and in this moment I realized that the squirrel faced the same philosophical dilemma as most lottery winners when they incur a giant windfall of cash and have zero idea how to properly handle it. His anxieties became mine, and I found myself thinking, I would probably not fare any better were I to win millions of dollars. Eventually the squirrel divided the stash into a few smaller piles and buried them all within a few inches of each other. I don't know why he did this, but maybe it has something to do with the investor warning about many eggs in one basket. He was so affixed to his hoard now that he had a hard time leaving it, but when he finally did, I spent the rest of the day thinking of how to ratchet up the drama that was unfolding between us. This preoccupation gave way to a sort of Lovecraftian madness, where all day long I experienced ghoulish, intrusive thoughts about the funniest shit I could do to this squirrel stash. Eventually I concluded that I needed to end the game and level the economic playing field among the squirrel population in the most communist way I could, lest this little bastard use his resource advantage to create some evil rodent monopoly or attempt to purchase a squirrel social media platform and torpedo it with cocaine-fueled incompetence to the benefit of totalitarian dictator squirrels overseas. So I went outside that night and reclaimed all of the nuts I'd given him, but I left him the one single nut he had initially buried. And when he came back the next day, he absolutely lost his shit, and was running all over the wooden fence and up and down the trees, searching for the culprit who had ripped him off. The amount of twitching and rage chirping he did was enough to disturb the nearby birds. I felt like a god then, lording over the fate of puny mortal squirrels who ventured into my yard, and I couldn't help but realize that if this squirrel had taken at least some of the nuts with him to another location, he'd have profited a great deal. The foolish creature learned the hard way that the HODL mentality does not always yield insane ROI. Sometimes you ride the wave to zero and end up with an empty wallet and your fuzzy little squirrel dick in your hand. I, like the market, can be a capricious mistress. When I went to bed that night I eagerly told my wife about my cruel shenanigans, and she laughed pretty hard at the story. However, the next morning when we woke up, the squirrel had absolutely devastated the garden, having dug scores of holes and pulling up little flowers and plants searching for his lost treasure. My wife is super pissed at me and this weekend I have to go fix the garden. I am not allowed to buy mixed nuts or interact with squirrels anymore. Too long did not read. Played a trick on a squirrel that backfired hard. Wife is super pissed at me and the squirrel has PTSD and an insatiable lust for destructive treasure hunting because of my foolish whimsy. Edit. I have returned the nuts to the squirrel. He will be happy tomorrow. Edit 2. For God's sake, I did not torture an animal, you fucking LiveJournal poets. Lighten up. Edit 3. I read this to my wife and she said sternly, it wasn't funny when it happened. I wasn't laughing. God damn squirrels fucking up my yard. They have no shame, the cunts. I am not allowed to buy mixed nuts or interact with squirrels anymore. Rolling on the floor laughing, rolling on the floor laughing. I have read many weird and wonderful things on Reddit in the last couple years that I've been on here. This is by far the top one. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Edit. Why are y'all giving this awards lol? Today you were the nut. Don't feel bad, friend. Squirrels are brilliant when they have home court advantage. Also, they are persistent bastards. You've leveled up your superhero game to the point where you now have a named supervillain nemesis. Today I fucked up by maybe accidentally inviting my plumber over for Thanksgiving. My plumber is a really nice guy with a heart of 24K gold. I've actually started smiling when I clog the toilet because it means he's coming over with his Italian accent and his arcane sense of humor. Last time as he walked in and saw my ceramic cactus sculpture, he remarked, "It a look-alike you have green tube guy, my friend." I honestly couldn't say what it is about him that excites me so much. I guess we all have people in our lives that we for some reason just enjoy being around. Yesterday, as he fixed my sink, we had one of our most intimate conversations ever. I told him about my family history of alcoholism, and he opened up about how his ex-wife was supposed to join him in the States a few years back but instead fell in love with another man. He lives alone here while all his family is still in Italy, and he just had a major falling out with 3 of his best friends. After he was done working, I opened a bottle of tequila and we kept taking shots and talking until we were beyond fucked. At one point, I guess I felt really bad about his situation, so I invited him to Thanksgiving dinner and he began to weep. We hugged and he told me he appreciated it so much. Then we took 3 more shots and he drove home. My wife was already displeased to come home and find me drunk on a Sunday, and then when I told her that our plumber was coming to Thanksgiving dinner, she went off. We've only been married a few months, and this is going to be our first Thanksgiving as a family. Her parents and siblings are coming over and it's a huge deal for her. She really wants to prove herself as a hostess and an adult. She says there is no way the plumber is coming to Thanksgiving. Now I have to call him or something and let him know he can't come, but that will shatter my heart and make his next house call very awkward. I might polish off the tequila tonight and send him a text or something. My palms are really sweaty as I type. Too long did not read. Got drunk and invited the plumber to my wife's inaugural Thanksgiving. Just let him come over. You already asked. It meant a lot to him. Kind of shitty to go back on it now. Who knows, could be the start of a great tradition. Then we took 3 more shots and he drove home. WTF. Do not uninvite him. If he broke down when you invited him originally, it will do a terrible amount of harm. Who knows, you might have been that tiny sliver of hope that things aren't terrible that he needed. I have been in the lowest place possible, and just another human showing some compassion and acknowledgement of my existence was enough to turn it around. Please don't uninvite him. Edit. Imagine if both of these people have just said wrong number, instead of connecting. Then we took 3 more shots and he drove home. Sounds like somebody effed up way worse than you that night. Better make sure he's still alive and not incarcerated so that he can even come to Thanksgiving dinner. Today I fucked up by saying yes when my coworker asked me if I would be his workwife. A couple months ago my coworker, M40, asked if I, F30, was his workwife. I thought workwife meant 2 people that were close at work, non-sexual. I even looked up the definition on Google and Urban Dictionary. We talk about once a week on the phone for 15–20 minutes. We are based out of separate offices. Our phone calls are as complaining about new policies or our boss. He occasionally would message or Snapchat me late at night saying random stuff. I just figured he was drunk. Fast forward to this weekend. He messaged me telling me he was taking PTO this week. He said he would be in my area on Tuesday. I said we should grab lunch. This is where it got weird. He then told me he was getting a hotel room with a nice comfy bed. He said he didn't want to sleep on his friend's couch. I told him that sounded nice. I do the same thing when I visit friends. He then messaged me to bring my suit for the pool. This made me feel weird because I have a boyfriend and he is married. I just didn't reply to him. He then messaged me the next day asking why I was ignoring his Snapchats. He was commenting on my story telling me I looked hot. He has never done this before. I just brushed it off. He then said, "Well, aren't you my work wife?" I replied saying I didn't understand what that implied when I said yes. He then apologized for his behavior and we haven't talked. I told my boyfriend and my friends about it. I am definitely not having lunch with him lol. Too long did not read. By saying yes when my coworker asked me to be his work wife. Now that your work divorced, tell him he owes you work alimony. I feel like I've only heard of work wife being used in contexts of close friends in the workplace as a joke. He doesn't seem to understand what it means and used it as an excuse to cross a boundary with you as if you agreed to be intimate. You didn't F up. You dodged a bullet from a guy who pretended to be a work friend but actually wanted to cheat on his wife. I thought work wife meant two people that were close at work, non-sexual. That's exactly what it is. He was just a creep. I get the idea of a work spouse, but I feel like calling it that implies a level of intimacy that encourages people to cross boundaries. I hear this kinda stuff all the time. Luckily my work wife is my actual wife because we work in the same office together. Tell the wife. Seriously. Today I fucked up by misremembering a memory from a previous relationship. I, 24, F, have been with my current boyfriend, 27, M, for 4 months. We only live together half of the month, the remaining time we are long distance due to his job. Today we were talking over the phone about our day, and I told him I met a local indie musician he loved. Boyfriend didn't remember the name of the artist, so I told him we met him at his favorite pub. Still, my boyfriend didn't remember. I told him he even followed him on Instagram and I teased him about it, and then it hit me. My boyfriend doesn't use Instagram. My ex did. He jokingly said, "Who are you going to concerts with?" I just replied that I must have misremembered and changed the subject. I wanted to disappear. I know my boyfriend won't talk about this anymore, but he sounded sad. My ex was a little man with no respect for me, and our relationship was nothing compared to what I have now with my current partner. I am in love for the first time ever and enjoy every moment we have together, living together half of the month. Both my ex and my current partner love the same artists and the same pub though, so I genuinely misremembered. Should I let this go or should I bring the subject back? I don't want to make this a bigger situation than it is, but I don't want my partner to remotely think I might cheat emotionally or that I might confuse his love and attention to me with some breadcrumbs my ex gave me. Too long did not read. I misremembered something I did with my ex and I told it to my current boyfriend. Now I feel he might be sad about it. Embarrassing, awkward honesty is better than letting him assume incorrectly. Tell him exactly what you told us so it doesn't stew in his mind without all the facts. Communication is so important. Honestly, this kinda sounds like you're so happy with this relationship in comparison to the previous relationship that your brain has overwritten the few good parts you had in that relationship. Meeting him, for example, with new partner. Bring it up and talk about it because I promise it at least kinda bothered him. I doubt he's mad or anything, but obviously it wouldn't feel great. Just say GM what you said here, or maybe even show him this post as I think you articulated it well. As long as you were thinking of your current boyfriend and not your shitty ex when you were misremembering things, then you're good to go. Just please communicate because not doing so is the only way this could have any negative impact at all.